He's having a hard time. I have to start all over. I call the meeting of January 9th, 2023 to order, and all council members are present except for Patrick, and he's having trouble logging on. So he should be joining us quite soon. And the time is 6 p.m. All right. First thing on the agenda is Pierce County Library update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. With us tonight is Executive Director for the Pierce County Library System, Gretchen Casserati. I think most of you have had the opportunity to meet her at some open houses. Tonight, she'll be going over the plans for the new Sumner Library branch and the next steps. And we will also be ending this conversation tonight with kind of next steps for our council and what they need to do to assist the library moving forward with their funding requests. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gretchen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Pleasure to be here. Look forward to getting to know you all over the next couple of months, hopefully as we work closely together to bring a new library to the downtown of the community of Sumner in Pierce County. Do you have? Perfect. I have a brief presentation, some slides with some information. And then I'd like to talk through the particular capital funding tool that we are going to be discussing with you all this evening. And then I'd love to leave some time for questions and discussion so that I can hear directly from you as the newcomer to this whole process, project, and community. So I'm sorry, it was this one, right, for advancing? Okay. So as Jason introduced me, I'm the new executive director. I have been here for 8 months. This is my 8th month here in Pierce County. I've been working in libraries for almost 20 years now across the country and had a variety of experiences in different sized communities from towns of 18, 19,000 to being in a branch in the New York Public Library System. And I'm pleased that I've had those experiences to bring to bear to projects like building a new community library here in the town of Sumner. As I mentioned, I wanted to share a little bit about a status update of where we are today in this project. I'm new, so I don't know what you know. Some of this may be a repeat of information you've gone over in the past. Some of it may be new as well for the benefit of any community members who might be sitting in tonight and haven't come along for the ride over the number of years that we've been working on this project, the library and the city together. So for generations, families in Sumner have been using a public library. It has moved locations in its history. And the current library on the road that it's on and the property that it's on is a property that has been slated for redevelopment, and through partnership with the city, we've been discussing since 2010 was our master facility plan, 2017 was public engagement, 2019 further engagement with exploring capital campaign feasibility. And that brings us to really today. So it's been many, many years in the works. And all along that way, everyone who's been a part of this project has shared a vision for having a library where everyone can come together in this community, a source of pride, of place for this community, and for multiple generations to have a community space and access to all the resources and programs and services a library has to offer. Our Sumner Library has been a very busy library branch over the many years. And despite some of the challenges we face in that current location, it has been a well-used facility in terms of library collections, computers, programs. All of our libraries were affected by the last 2.5 years of the pandemic. Libraries across the country have had to adapt, so Sumner is no different in that respect. But what we identified as in our 2010 facility plan, and why we started talking with the city to begin with, was that we also identified that current library's location, space, design, and size no longer met the needs of the Sumner community. Modern libraries are designed with a lot more flexibility. This building was built with a bond 30 years ago. And the size of it was built for a community before Sumner grew to the size that it is and continues to grow. And in addition, that area has been reshaped by other investments and economic changes. We hear probably daily that people get frustrated that they can't get into the parking lot to use the library because of the traffic. So we know the location, the size, and the design are all opportunities that we took with the city a number of years ago to start talking about what could we do then? What are options for a library that would be better suited to this small town that we feel so much pride in? And thus the city worked really closely with the library to secure a new site, a new property that is in the downtown area, that is closer to residences, schools, and commerce. And they worked with us, you worked with us to procure that parcel of land. And the library then took that and did environmental studies, did site fit work with architects over recent years, and had been working diligently to continue to move that project forward up until our former executive director, Georgia Lomax, retired, and I took the helm just in 2022. So this location was something that was selected in partnership with the city as an ideal site, and one large enough that we could expand the footprint of a new library branch in the community. So we have started working with our architects, as I mentioned, to identify what could fit on that site. We know that this location has a lot more advantages to serving the needs of the community while still remaining in a high traffic, high access area. Libraries draw a lot of people through our doors, and time again across the United States, it's shown that libraries bring commerce to those areas. So we know that this will be an exciting place for a library that's close to residences, shopping, and transit. Walkable, bikeable, and then some of the things we know will be included in a new library branch with a bigger footprint. Obviously expanded access to resources, but we know we're also planning to include play spaces and children's play areas, lots of meeting rooms, study rooms, places for the community to gather. We will continue to support the Pierce County Law Library kiosk. And we know right across from the high school that we'll want to have places for teenagers to come and be in a safe place after school. We work closely with Workforce Central and other economic partners to make sure there's spaces in a branch for job seekers and supporting entrepreneurs and small business owners. And of course, we know that as a community space, we'll work with community partners to deliver services through the library. One example is in recent months, we did a pop-up program with Tacoma Pro Bono, who comes and does free legal advice. And in Sumner, we had almost 10 people show up, 9 people came, and 4 of them came for support with domestic violence situations. So we know that the library is a place where people trust that they can get information and access to services that are vitally important to their lives. And a new library will allow us to have a convenient location with more room for those activities to work with those community partners. Now, down to the brass tacks, a publicly funded library building does require funding to build. A library district has a number of tools at our disposal. We have been studying those with our board for a number of years. I'm not going to present you or overwhelm you with a comprehensive list of those tools, but our approach at this point is to recommend to our board, in order to build this library, we would want to take a blended model approach. A blended model will allow us to use funding that we can privately fundraise. We have been included in the governor's budget for a state capital appropriation of just over $1 million for this project so far. The library system itself would dedicate cash toward this project. And the remainder of what we couldn't pay for ourselves would be an opportunity for us with the city of Sumner and through the Pierce County would be to run a ballot measure just in the city of Sumner. A library capital facility area is a provision in the RCW that allows a district to define a portion of their overall district, and then in partnership with the municipalities, put a ballot measure forward. And LCFA essentially creates a sub-district in a legal definition. And then with the county, having trustees essentially to administer, if the bond were to pass, administer those funds over the life of that bond measure. So for 20 years, the city of Sumner, the library, and the county would have an LCFA board that would continue to meet to oversee those funds until it is paid off. The library system would need to enter into an interlocal agreement with the LCFA to administer the construction, to build and operate that library until the bond is paid off at the end of that period. So it would require a great deal of communication, a great deal of collaboration, and a lot of administrative work. But from our perspective, we are prepared. This project has been worked on for many, many years. And from our perception, the community has been waiting for something to happen. And I am here now. I've gotten up to speed on what the project is and what our opportunities are. And thus we are recommending to our board, and I'm coming to you tonight to ask that you consider what it would take for us to pursue developing an LCFA ballot measure to ask the residents of Sumner in the fall of 2023 if they would support the funding for building the construction of a new library in this downtown area. We are still very much in the early stages of putting all these things together with our board. January marks the beginning of this process to bring forward the potential, the opportunity to do the education, the training, as well as really narrow down the details. In meeting with the county and the elections division, the deadline for filing to run a ballot measure on the August ballot would be May 12th or 13th. May 12th or 13th. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. And then we would be able to also run it in November if we needed to or chose to. So looking at May 12th as a sort of goalpost milestone, the library system is coming tonight to initiate that process so that we can take the next 3 months to really dig through the details and come to a place of agreement between our agencies, and then bring that forward to the county in March and into April in order to meet a filing deadline in May. We know that the city owns the land that the library is currently under, and part of my recommendation to proceed with this funding tool in 2023 is being aware that the agreement we have with the city expires in 2024 for the current interlocal agreement with the lease we have on that property. We appreciate the way the city has been working with us and being flexible, and that we would never want to take away a library. And so we would be hopeful that if we proceed with this ballot measure, that we can continue to negotiate and work on the terms of the current agreement so that we could continue to have a continuity of service until a new library could open its doors. And let me check my notes. I got a little off topic there. Timeline, January through March. So part of the work that we're doing right now is also working with architects. We are doing some public engagement and some public opinion work to try to understand what sentiments are today. We know that we did that engagement in 2019, and everyone in this room knows that the world is a very different place from 2019. So we did feel it would be prudent for us to go and do a little more fresh information gathering to check our assumptions so that we're not using old information. And we anticipate that those results will be coming to our board in March. And so by March, we hope to have information on what the results of those surveys and that information are, what the architects have to share with us about any new findings that they have. So we have some information on those in our library branch. We'll have some open houses. We have some surveys going around. Some residents will get postcards. They can fill out surveys online. We've got things in the branch, a variety of techniques, fairly traditional and common techniques to get some information about what people think about a new library. So we hope that we can lean on the city to help get the word out to make sure we get good responses for those. And then our board will be reviewing those materials, like I said, in March. So as far as next steps go, our board will be meeting actually this Wednesday, and then we are also scheduling a special meeting towards the end of January We are also working in the community of Lakewood. So we have 2 capital projects running simultaneously that we're working on. And we will continue to go through the details with the board, the library board, to talk about how to define the LCFA boundaries. We have a list of precincts that we can use to draw the boundary areas with the county. From there, we can draw an assessment of the household, the market value of that subdistrict. And then we can calculate some estimates on what a household tax impact would be. Our goal would be to minimize any tax increase and maximize services for the community. So that's part of the blended model, as I mentioned earlier. Raise as much as we can from outside means, minimize what we would do. I fully recognize that the economy is somewhat unstable, is maybe the best way to put that. Everyone's watching it. And certainly in the time of inflation, rising cost of living, there are a lot of constraints on property tax, on homeowners, on residences. And we fully recognize that that is a condition of the environment we're in. I'm also very aware that this community has been waiting for a long time. And the longer we continue to wait, the more expensive a project gets. And the less people may be engaged with wanting to support the construction of a new library in this community. And we see that this time right now, when people are also feeling hungry for connection, hungry for community building and togetherness, that is exactly what a public library can do in a community. And having a new library where people can really galvanize around something that benefits everyone in the community could be a real opportunity for Sumner to rally together and have a really positive community building experience. So that's sort of the broad picture of where the library is at in our planning, why I'm coming to you this evening to present this opportunity, and a little bit of a timeline and a roadmap for what would need to come in the next few weeks and months in order for this to be put forward for the community to decide if they are ready, willing, and want to have a new library across from Fred Meyer on Main Street. So with that, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me this evening.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Barbara, do you? She has a list. Watch out.
No, I do have.
Go ahead.
So Gretchen, I love all of this. The only thing I don't quite understand, and that's because I don't think I've ever been through that, is this board that handles the bond. I mean, that just almost sounds to me like that's an accounting firm you need or something. Or why does the board, because they're not going to be spending money out of there. They're only going to be putting money into that once it's been borrowed as a. Mhm. Maybe Jason can answer.
Please, yes.
That's a good one to choke on though, right?
I will do my best. So one of the things that the city has to do, and I'm going to back up a little bit because it'll help answer the question, is the city has to agree that we want this on the ballot. Okay, so the first step is, we're going to ask council if they want this, and if so, we will go ahead and then prepare a resolution that approves the city joining the LCFA. At the same time, Pierce County Council has to adopt a similar resolution because they administer financially the funds that would be collected, and they also run the election piece of it. Okay. If it passes, then there's a board, the LCFA board, that then manages those revenues coming in. Think of it as an oversight board that would include elected officials that make sure that the proceeds that are collected from the bond are spent legally and for their intended purposes. So this secondary board, no different than our board seats on SHAPE or South Sound 911 or well, those are two that come to my mind right away, that kind of help govern the use of those funds.
So they begin when the spending happens,
when the funds start being
when the
collected.
funds come in, but then they're watching it go out to the appropriate projects.
Yep.
And then after that, for 20 years, it's going to be being collected.
Yes.
And then the same board is watching it come back in Pierce County will have all those numbers.
Right. So what if you collect more revenue than you thought, or you collect more revenue more quickly, right? That board could authorize paying off those bonds early, for example. So think about, the board is going to be very busy earlier in the project as it's going through construction and C of O. And then those board responsibilities start slowing down, and probably, I would imagine, once a year after the library is open.
Okay, all right,
Okay,
well,
answer
thank
that?
you.
Yes, thank you
Okay.
for buying me a second there too.
I mean, I've heard of bonds, but I never have been alongside where one was going to be taken care of by a board and all that.
And we have been researching, there are a few library districts in the state of Washington that have an LCFA, Snow Isle Library District in particular. So we've gone and we've met with them. We've looked at, they have on their website all the minutes for the once a year LCFA board meeting. The county assigned a council member, a library trustee, and a third was from the city for that board. So it's kind of by position, almost a representative of those agencies, since the people themselves may come and go over time. And that's where the county plays that role to facilitate between all three of the agencies.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anybody else down here? Any questions from those online? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Gretchen. I appreciate the presentation. My questions all have to do with the bond issue. And the comments you made are well put, that our library is underutilized because of its size, and of course the pandemic changed that a lot. My concern is through my campaigning a year plus ago, City of Sumner residents feel overtaxed. And if this bond issue is limited to the City of Sumner residents, I fear that it will fail. My concern also is, a question, I guess, is have you considered including adjacent residential areas of communities such as Ording? We are famous for being a pass-through city during the rush hour. And that's in a perfect spot because the rush hour goes right by it. And if the citizens in Ording are not happy with their library, they could take up space in ours, and also Bonnie Lake. I'm curious about that. Those two come to mind, but there may be others in a regional location that could help fund this so that the residents of Sumner don't have to fund the whole thing.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That is a great question and a great point to draw out in this public setting. Right now, the precincts that we are drafting are the City of Sumner precincts and the unincorporated areas in your urban growth plan. And so that does include commercial, residential. The idea is it's the primary audience of Sumner, the primary residents of Sumner, the people who use Sumner. I share your awareness of that issue. And I would just respond that if this measure doesn't pass in Sumner, we will necessarily have to take another look at how we would approach capital planning in the district as a whole. It's something that I'm dealing with as the new executive director, is we have to go through a comprehensive master facility plan for the district. And so there would be an opportunity to reevaluate that. But I would just offer that would be many years of planning. And so from my perspective, again, if the community has been working on this for so many years, I would still see this as an opportunity to try to see if that sentiment still holds. And if it doesn't, we will need to know from the city what your intentions are with the property. With the agreement expiring 2024, the library district would then probably have to look to lease a space in town to move a library to a temporary or a retail or a leased space. If we no longer have the property on the river and a ballot measure didn't pass. And so we have to think through the practical realities of what happens if it doesn't pass, just as much as what happens if it does pass. I think that there would be opportunities to break the whole county into regions where maybe they align with school district boundaries or the fire district boundaries or something. But I've only been here for 7-8 months. And so that will be a whole different level of planning that would take a lot of time to get us to. So if it doesn't pass and we go down that path, then I may be back here in 2027 having a different conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reed, do you have? your
Yeah,
hand?
I have some comments as well. Part of it has already been addressed. I share Councilmember Stewart's perception that there is tax fatigue throughout the city pretty significantly. And also, I think messaging in this process is going to be big. It's no surprise for a lot of folks that I'm generally not in favor of tax increases. However, this is a little bit different. This is a tangible and or capital investment within the community. And I do like the idea of the city partnering with Pierce County Library System to try and come up with a solution. I think there are some definite hurdles with a tax measure, especially having been on council since 2016. There a lot of the discussions surrounding the property swaps and the different approaches have been a heavy focus on the raising funds through the donation process, not through the tax process. Matter of fact, I think that early on it was mentioned multiple times that the goal is not to come back for a bond measure. The goal is not to come back for a tax measure. But I also recognize costs are very different now than they were in 2016, 17, 18. And that might be something that's necessary, but it doesn't change the fact that those discussions were had and are out there. So I think messaging is going to be huge. Having some clear examples of successful library districts where it's been very clear that the money's been raised and used on budget, on time. I think those are going to be very important in the process. I know we're still early, but those were some of my concerns as well.
All right. Anybody else? Councilmember Botetto.
Could you talk about why you don't want to go for the whole, Pierce County Library District? I understand it, but people might not understand why you wouldn't go to all the voters.
Sure. Let's see, how can I say it succinctly? The last district-wide bond that was passed in the state of Washington was 2011, I believe. The library district has to pay to run ballot measures, as we've learned from our 2018 levy lid lift and other efforts over the years. In order to develop a comprehensive capital plan for the 650,000 residents of Pierce County, it really has to be something for everyone. And a risk that districts have run into in the state of Washington is overbuilding in some just to get something passed, underbuilding where there's an area of growth, and not being able to be flexible or agile as communities change over time. And certainly we would love to not have to come and ask for property tax increases to the voters. There are very few tools. We are also a publicly funded institution. Our property taxes collected for our operations go toward our operations, and any ballot measures for capital would go toward that. And so we would love to be able to privately fundraise $20 million for a building, but we also know that's not feasible in this community alone, never mind across the whole county. So I would say it's not off the table forever, but that is easily a 10-year project to plan for a district-wide bond, which would have to be in the tens, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, which is even more significant and substantial. That's my nickel response to.
Well, I think it helps for the community to understand why you're, aiming for this smaller area and, so that we know the funds raised will stay here in Sumner, that it's not going to go to Lakewood, that they
Right.
need it desperately. I read today that Ordine said, well, we'd love to have a new library, so I think
Oh,
this
no.
is a great idea.
There,
Or
everyone's gonna-
somebody said
Everyone
that
wants one.
a comment was made that they would like to see it, so.
Yes,
I
and
think that
Madam Mayor, if I may,
is-
my understanding is that's why the legislature created this provision for the library capital facility area, is so that there are areas that you can just carve out. Now, if we do this, we put this ballot measure forward, and if it passes, the library district would have an even harder time trying to run a district-wide general bond, because we'd have to run it everywhere else except Sumner. So by making a commitment to move down this path, the library district is in essence accepting we're going to have a very different non-traditional approach to the capital facility planning for the communities across the district. We're also living in a time where things are shifting and changing around how people use the buildings, how people use the services, looking at outreach differently, looking at how can we be more flexible with smaller spaces instead of larger spaces? Where does it make sense in Sumner, for example, being on this eastern region, to have a larger library anchoring in this community is a really strong benefit, in that you'll have additional routes for collections to be moved around the county. We can house things like the law library. There's more space for those things to be rooted here. So we have a long ways to go in working with our board on the long range plan. That's another one of my projects for 2023.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Councilmember Newman.
Thank you. I was wondering if a strategy for the actual campaign part of the bond has been developed or is going to be, like, including fundraising for that to pay for them, like for it to be, I would say, like a healthy and robust campaign to help improve the odds of the bond passing.
Madam Mayor, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. I have a few things that I would like to share. One is that because we are a publicly funded entity, we may not use public dollars to advocate for a ballot measure. So anything that we share will be information about it. This is what it entails. This is how the money would be used. This is what you will get if you vote yes. This is what happens if you vote no, right? Very information only. Citizens can do whatever they want. And I'm aware that there is a group of citizens that have come together to start working on how they might support the library. Thank you to those citizens. And then I would also comment that we, for a number of years, have been working on a capital campaign. And the fundraising goal for our Pierce County Library Foundation is $3 million. We have already privately raised or committed 1.5 million. So we are at halfway to the goal of raising 3 million for this project alone. We will continue to, as the project moves forward, write grants. I mentioned we've got state funding in there. So that fundraising campaign is run through our foundation. I hope that helps to just understand the sort of 3 different areas of information about the ballot measure and where there are limitations on our part and the city's part, and where there are less limitations for citizen-led groups or nonprofits that might want to support or get information out. Anything you want to add from the? I don't know if they would put the friend. You can contact the foundation. Yes, the foundation. Okay. Yeah, sorry. If there are citizens who are interested in helping in that way, they should reach out to the Pierce County Library Foundation.
Okay, great.
Jason was
Thank
just
you.
asking me who they should go to, and I'm
Okay.
not really sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to tell you that you have my full support, and I thought your explanation was very clear. And I hope a lot of citizens are seeing this. And I will be on a citizens committee to help move this forward.
Oh, terrific. Thank you.
It was a good crowd at the library the other night. That's a good sign.
And I'm happy to leave my information. I'm happy to meet one-on-one with any of the council members if you want to dig in. We'll continue to communicate. Jason and I meet fairly regularly. And you'll see my face probably a lot over the next 4 months as we hopefully continue to work together on this.
All right. Thank you very much. Do you have something else, Barbara? Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And I really appreciate what an incredible partnership the library and the city have had together, and the support and the communication, especially as a newcomer. It's been really wonderful to just feel so welcomed. And I really appreciate that. So thank you.
It'll be
So
fun.
do you have any handouts about the project that you could leave with the council?
I do.
Thank you.
Is there going to be a sign?
Yes.
How many times have I asked that? 100 times. Thank you.
Thank you.
And council, you see this back on your agenda. We'll probably bring it to a study session in mid-February-ish, and then for action, the following council meeting. This would be the resolution author and giving your support for the library district to move forward with the county to establish the LCFA for the bond measure.
Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have City of Sumner Sidewalk Program Overview. Do we have Mr. Kosa?
Yeah, Mr. Kosa and Mr. Leach will be up here in just a moment. They'll be providing council an update of our sidewalk program. We have a number of sidewalk programs that were funded in the budget, and I know there were questions that came up during our budget process of how do we evaluate sidewalks? What's the city responsibility versus the property owner responsibility, and where we're going from there. So they're going to be going through a comprehensive review of our sidewalk program and our policies. So give them just a minute to get set up.
Good evening, Mayor Hayden and council members. As Jason mentioned, tonight Andrew is going to be reviewing our approach to sidewalks. Andrew's been with the city for 10 years and has spent the majority of that time with sidewalks as his area of responsibility. And then he'll summarize our current project, our currently funded sidewalk programs. So.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Good to see you guys. So tonight, talk about sidewalks. I'll hop to our overview slide. I'll note this current PowerPoint has been updated a little bit compared to what the PowerPoint that was in the packet. So just wanted to note that. So just to overview what we'll be presenting tonight, we'll talk about a sidewalk definition, what that is per our Sumner Municipal Code, how that kind of creates a sidewalk system. We'll talk about sidewalk responsibilities for city versus property owners, and our 3 sidewalk programs that were approved with the latest budget cycle. So first off, we'll start with what the sidewalk definition is per our municipal code. So I'll read this off here real quick. This is directly from our code. A sidewalk is any thoroughfare, the primary function of which is to serve pedestrian traffic. The term includes any and all improvements included in the space between the street pavement edge and the property line, known as the sidewalk area. This includes sidewalks, gutters, and curbs along all driveways and across sidewalks. So per this definition, it creates the sidewalk is not just the concrete path that you walk in. So, and then this photo here is kind of our standard detail for a sidewalk design that we design our projects and require developers to design sidewalks to. So with that, definition, there's the sidewalk area, or also known, or we call it the sidewalk system. So for the photo there, it's the area between the private property line and the edge of pavement. So this all consists of a few different items on there. There's the sidewalk itself, that's the raised pavement surface you walk on. Not in this photo, it also includes curb ramps. So these are the ramps for access to cross it, to the crosswalks, get to and from the street. It also includes the planting strip. That's where we have our street trees. It's the planted area adjacent to the sidewalk. We have the gutter. This is used to collect our stormwater runoff from the streets. It's also where we have our catch basins located. And then we have the curb, which is the short wall that holds the sidewalk in place, separating it from the street. So just to define or talk about sidewalk responsibilities, a lot of this is per our municipal code as well. First, we'll talk about property owner responsibilities. Property owners are required to clear sidewalks of all debris. They're required to monitor sidewalks and report any damages. They are required to complete the sidewalk repairs that are not city responsibility. And they're also responsible for maintaining the street trees and tree limbs smaller than 1 inch. So this includes watering or fertilizing trees as well. But they are also required to fully maintain private property trees. That's any trees lying on their private property that affect the sidewalk system. So if a private property tree causes damage to the sidewalk, they're responsible for that driveway, that repair. But on the responsibility side for the city of Sumner, cities are responsible for repairs related to street tree damages or failed utilities, such as, say, there's a sewer line underneath a sidewalk, an old one that fails, causes a sinkhole, causes a sidewalk to sink and break. The city is responsible for that repair as well. The city is also in charge of doing the major maintenance on street trees, such as the limbs larger than 1 diameter. So those are the little differences in between responsibilities between a property owner and the city.
I have a question right here.
We have, Cindy has a question.
Andrew, I guess, does the property owner own the sidewalk or does the city own the sidewalk?
So
I know you each have different responsibilities, and I know we talk about this all the time, but when it comes right down to it, who owns that piece of property and what's on there?
I would say it's the property owner is the owner, but it's within the city kind of right away. So the property owner is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of planter strips, the sidewalk, curb gutter, driveway approaches.
Okay. But the city
So-
has rights to do certain things under or through or in the planting strip.
So the city's right of way is the area that the city essentially owns and maintains. It's essentially owned by the public. So you can see that image. It's got the private property, kind of that area is kind of yellowed out. That's the property line. That's where everything on that side of the property is private property, but our sidewalk, the sidewalk itself, the street trees, the curb and gutter are all in city right of way. So that land is not owned by a property owner. However, as a property owner that abuts right of way, you have a responsibility, you have the responsibilities as laid out in code to maintain maintain that adjoining right of way. So
So the city owns the right of way,
the city owns the city owns the right of way.
but the citizens have certain responsibilities on that right of way.
As property owners, you have
Okay.
responsibilities to the right of way adjacent to your property. And those are what was highlighted in the presentation there. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
I think it does, but I think that's different than what I got out of Andrew.
I think it might have been a little bit different, but I think it's just a little bit nuanced.
Because I was thinking the homeowner owned the sidewalk, but you're saying they don't really own the sidewalk. That's in the city's right of way.
Mhm.
but they have responsibilities for caring and maintaining that area.
So like on your property bill,
Mhm.
from Pierce County, you will see, the square footage of your parcel on the paperwork that you have, and that's not including that adjacent right of way, because you own your property pins and corners.
Okay, so
are
yes, your
literally the
property
four
line
corners
is
of your
up,
property.
is probably at the edge of that.
Mhm. And then that's essentially where that property line ends is where our sidewalk system begins.
Okay, great. All right.
Everything from there.
I feel a
and-
lot better now. Thank you.
I'm glad you do.
Responsibilities, just further responsibilities for property owners. Of course, clearing of sidewalks that includes snow, ice, dirt, leaves, waste, etc. They're responsible for maintaining the vegetation within the planting strip. That's mowing the grass, weeding, watering, fertilizing, and the minor trimming of limbs, less than 1 inch of street trees. And then of course, no parking on sidewalks. Only parking designated areas are the sidewalks are designed they're not rated for vehicle traffic. So driving or parking on them will cause them to break as well. And that becomes a homeowner responsibility to fix. We do have a sidewalk complaint process that we follow. Starting with intaking complaints, usually always come in by phone or email. We'll schedule an inspection and a rating for that complaint. We'll send an inspector out to determine the cause of damage, give the damage a level of rating. We'll take that cause of damage and assign it to one of our new programs. And then in the meantime, we'll have our shops make a temporary fix. And we'll also contact the complainant to let them know the results of the cause of damage and whose responsibility it is for repairs. So next, we'll get into our new sidewalk our 3 different sidewalk programs that we just were approved in the budget. We have our street tree sidewalk repair program, our helping homeowner sidewalk program that was previously called it the volunteer sidewalk program, and then our ADA improvement program. First up, the street tree repair program has a biennial budget of $500,000. This program is specifically for fixing damages caused by street trees, the city responsibility to fix. And to kind of help come up with that budget, we completed a citywide damage assessment last year in 2022 and determined we have about 456 locations that are in need of fixing. We do have kind of come up with a repair plan for the program, starting with design in 2023, construction in 2024, where we're going to prioritize these repair locations, starting with in areas without recent sidewalk repairs, areas with lowest equity index. I'll kind of get into equity index just a little bit. Next couple slides, and then the worst rated areas based on our damage assessment that we completed. So this first project is kind of the first part. To complete all 456 repairs, it's going to be need to be done over a 10-year period here. So this first budget is kind of the first phase for this first biennium. So to get into the equity cost or equity index. So this is a photo of the overall Pierce County equity index map they've provided. This map's used to assess equity all across Pierce County. It's an assessment of equity overview, livability, accessibility, economy, education, and environmental health. So we'll be using this map to kind of determine where we'll start repairs. So here's kind of an example zoomed in on Sumner with the equity index map overlaid, where we have the green dots are street tree damages that we've identified. So the red areas are a higher equity index. The lighter yellowish to white areas are the low equity index. So we'll be kind of focusing on starting in the low equity index areas. Next, we have the Helping Homeowner Sidewalk Program. It has a biennial budget of $100,000. $50,000 will be from city funds. The other $50,000 will be from homeowner funds. This program is for assisting homeowners with sidewalk repairs that are normally their responsibility. It is a cost share program with 50-50 split between the applicant and the city,
But that's not straight trees, right?
not street trees, correct. So the plan for this program will be to offer applications to homeowners with damaged sidewalks not related to street trees that have been reported to the city. We'll be completing the design and construction with the street tree repair program. This just helps to mitigate extra costs and also will get us one contractor on the job. So one project under one contract, lower costs, construction costs that way. So this program will also be designed in 2023 and constructed in 2024.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So I know, like you said, for the crosswalks, that, sort of weather dependent. Is this program also weather dependent? Would you do it probably in the spring, summer, fall?
We probably, for construction 2024, we probably target to go out to bid early in the year, that's the best bid period. And then go to construction spring, summer, when the weather's driest, and try to get it in before fall and wet weather and not as conducive for concrete work.
All right.
Okay, go ahead.
I need you to explain the livability and equity chart thing again a little bit more, because I understand you're using that to help set your priorities. But I don't know, are you going to places that are less livable or
Yes.
you're trying to do, okay.
Oops, sorry.
No, I want you to explain. I mean, I was just trying to figure it out in my mind, but which way it meant.
Yes, so we'd start in the lower equity index, I guess, lower, less equitable, not, you want to be in the higher, you want to be higher, have more equity in your areas. So I guess higher equity is good, lower equity is bad. So
Okay.
we'll
So
start in the
you're
lower.
talking about areas that don't have a lot of repairs done already.
Yes. Well, not, the equity map doesn't have to do with where we've done past repairs. It's based on, I think, kind of some census data, incomes and connectability, kind of things like that. So part of our prioritization of where we do repairs will be starting with repairs where we haven't had past sidewalk projects in the past. But the equity map, it's set up through Pierce County. It's not an assessment done by us.
Sure. I can add a little bit more clarity here. Pierce County Equity Index looks at several different factors. So it looks at walkability, it looks at environmental factors, traffic, median income, property values. It looks at a whole bunch of different things, and then it kind of rates the areas based. It loosely follows census data lines. We can see here that you have two different census tracts here, but they have three different colors on the map. So it really just says, if you had the perfect community where it's fully walkable, clean air, no traffic, good wages, good assessed valuation, you're going to be at the very highest. You're going to be in that red section. And then it goes down from there based on all those factors that they put into their model, and it comes up with this. This is a tool that's being used more and more in Pierce County. This is our city's first application of this, but we were looking for a way to really invest in our sidewalks, invest our capital, monies in the best way possible to make sure that it's distributed throughout the community and not just in certain areas. And historically, because of the Sound Transit investment, you can see there's very little sidewalk damage now in and around the Sounder station. So this is a way to make sure that even though there might still be some damage that needs to be repaired closer to the station, it's making sure that we spread that money throughout our community and that investment.
So we're going where there's lower equity. Okay.
Correct. It'll be one of the factors considered, but it's also the level of damage. If you have something that's really horrendous,
Mhm.
that's going to rise to the top. But if you have two equal, it's going to, the equity index will help tip it that direction.
Anybody else?
The homeowners repair program. All right, and then the third program that we have is the ADA improvement program with a biennial budget of 80,000. This program's for more immediate ADA issues that have been reported to city, such as non-ADA compliant curb ramps, sidewalks, or driveway approaches. These repairs are funded and completed by the city. These photos are just a few examples of non-ADA compliant, 3 non-ADA compliant curb ramps, and then a interesting section of sidewalk that didn't get aligned properly that has some trip hazards and things like that. So kind of the repair plan for this program, it's used on a case-by-case basis. It's more for emergent issues, such as we get a complaint that somebody can't get to and from their vehicle, or unable to, if they're in a wheelchair and they can't get, say, to the path to their front door because of a large lip in the sidewalk or something that prevents the wheels from getting over. So we do have a ADA accommodation request form available that can be filled out and submitted to notify us of these kind of issues. So like I said, just kind of a more as needed as the complaints come in kind of program. So this is just, again, summarizing kind of everything I've talked about tonight. So we've got the 3 programs that we discussed, the differences between the city responsibility for repairs versus property owner responsibilities. And then just as we're moving along here, we're continuing to kind of advance these programs as needs change. So kind of in movement program here is different programs as we move along here. So are there any other questions?
Okay, do we have any questions? Jeff, can you make it so I can see the, go ahead.
So, we're doing a lot of work with the water mains, and there must be some sidewalks that are affected by that. And is that all that covered by that project? All the sidewalk repair?
Correct. Yep. So this last sidewalk project that we did, I paid a lot of attention to making sure we stayed out of those areas that the water main project would be working on, as well as the Academy Street bike lanes. A lot of those curb ramps and intersections are going to be redone. So we stayed out of that area in plans for this upcoming project. So to not have to double up.
Right. Okay.
And both that project and both the previous sidewalk project and this water main project don't have any sort of private property owner responsibility. It's by the city. City's doing the work and
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
So, and then it's all planned, all that money is already planned in that budget. It's not any of this.
correct.
that we're
That's a
looking for the
completely
future.
separate pot of money.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Good presentation, gentlemen. I appreciate the good pictures and the work that you've done on this. I have a couple questions. First of all, about the planting strips and maintaining the sidewalk, getting debris off. I like that concept. I totally support that. I've seen, as I ride my bike around town, I've seen different homeowners tend to choose different kinds of landscaping. Do they have the flexibility of putting what they want there? I realize that you have to approve the trees, but what if they don't want to do grass and they want to dig the grass up and put flowers or something like that? Is that a possibility for them?
There is, we do have some flexibility in our development standards. So there are different things you can put in that planter strip as long as it meets really that low vegetation requirement. We're not looking for anything growing up too high so that it becomes a hedge or becomes blocking from a visual standpoint. So really kind of low low-level vegetation growth is in there as a possible opportunity. And that is in our development standards as an option.
Okay, and I'm sad to say that I've seen some areas where the lawn by the houses are well maintained, but the lawn in the planting strip are dried up and dead. Does the city go around and remind people that they have a responsibility to take care of that in that way?
It becomes a code enforcement
Yeah,
issue.
our philosophy at code enforcement, remember, is complaint driven. So if we receive a complaint from somebody, then yes, it would enter the code enforcement process at that point.
Okay, and then lastly, being a bicycle rider, is it when there's no bike lane on streets like, say, Sumner Street, is it okay to ride on the sidewalk, or do we have to be on the street?
That's a great question. At times, there is in our code, there are locations in town where it is allowed to ride a bicycle on a sidewalk, in other areas where it is not, and it's a bit fuzzy right at the moment. And basically in commercial areas is where we restrict bicyclists on the sidewalk. That becomes very apparent, Main Street, for example. It can get pretty dicey if you have somebody riding on the sidewalk, and there's doors that open right onto that sidewalk, so it can get kind of dangerous. So those are areas where it's restricted, but in general, in residential areas, it's not restricted in that way. So
Mhm. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else? There you go, gentlemen. Thank
Just
you.
one quick note, I want to give kudos to our engineering assistant, Courtney Luttrell. She put the majority of work of getting this presentation together for us. It's been a big help for me in kind of getting these programs moving forward. And she was actually going to be the one presenting this tonight, but was unable to make it due to illness. So
Yeah.
just wanted to give her credit for work
Okay.
she's done.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right. So we will move on to the city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one announcement. It's more of just a reminder. Next Monday is Martin Luther King Day, so our regular council meeting will be on Tuesday and 6 o'clock normal time.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any council meeting issues? For council? None? Any committee issues that we need to address? None. Everything's all good. No executive session tonight? I guess we will adjourn at, what time is it? 7:03.